Hello, good morning. Thank you for joining me. Like most days, I don't sit down and have an agenda. I was torn between talking about women's rights and feminism, and also I need more of that. Wow. And just doing like a horrible Donald Trump impression for 45 minutes, talking about no pan, look behind. But at the end of the day, like, it's pretty easy just to let my mouth go where my mind goes as I'm talking. Because that's basically just like letting the ADHD win for 45 minutes. Usually I have to sort through 1,000 thoughts and put them on paper. I mean, paper is very helpful. And then like open my mouth after I know what I'm going to say, which is like not a horrible idea in general to like know what you're going to say before you actually blurt out what's on your mind. But to not have to do that and just be able to talk stream of consciousness and, like I said, just kind of like let the ADHD be is also kind of nice. You know, not to have to plan and present yourself in a certain way is very refreshing. And I know some people don't really know what ADHD feels like, because, you know, it's just how you are. Like, you don't realize that you have ADHD. You realize you're different from everyone else, and this is how. And if you're fortunate, you can get a diagnosis, or you can just be like extremely versed in it and realize you have ADHD, like me. But it can be, it still doesn't really take away the challenge. Like, being diagnosed gives you a vocabulary and an awareness and access to resources, but it really doesn't change at the end of the day who you are. It's just your name, right? Like, if my name weren't Jennifer, like, I would still be me. So like, I'm still gonna have to struggle with ADHD whether I know that I have it or not. But hopefully knowing that I have it gives me, you know, more accommodations for myself, really, because I don't qualify publicly. But for myself, I can give myself a little bit more grace and forgiveness, and hopefully not have as much ableism in my own life against people. You know, I would never intentionally be ableist, but, you know, understanding what people go through and having a different sets of experiences can like help you combat like the incidental stuff, because that's what it looks like. Oh, there's a psychologist, I can't remember her name, but she is on YouTube. But she says, she was talking about racism, and she's like, people think racism is the shark, like it's the shark swimming around and it's like going to get you, and everyone sees it and everyone knows what it is, and everyone's out with their harpoons trying to kill it. But that's not what it is. It's the water. It's the institutions and the systems and the culture and the beliefs and the attitudes. It is the water in which you navigate. And the absence of a malicious threat doesn't mean that the racism doesn't exist. It doesn't mean you're not breathing it in every single day. And I just thought that was like such the perfect metaphor. Because like I said, I would never be intentionally hurtful. But that doesn't mean that I don't embrace or embody ableist beliefs, and I don't have assumptions about the way that people, quote unquote, should act or behave. So I think it's just like this, always good to have that opportunity to have some self-awareness and to realize that not all people are like you. And then you realize that you're actually on that group too. You know, you don't have to work extra hard to compensate for having a disability, which is, quite frankly, that's an ableist belief in and of itself. Like, you don't have to prove that you don't have ADHD. You don't have to overcome ADHD. You don't overcome it even when you succeed. You simply move on with it. You know, it's who you are. You're not discarding that part of you. You're living with that part of you in a healthy way. But that's what we all want in life. And that's not ableist. That's acknowledging that you have the condition, working with the condition, and simply being you. And I feel like when you're able to just be you, unapologetically, you're more closer to living a life that is going to promote, not necessarily guarantee, but promote mental wellness. When you aren't ashamed of who you are, I feel like that's a huge prerequisite. And a lot of people say things like, well, I should be able to do this and I should be able to do that. And I'm like, no, you shouldn't. You have ADHD. That's not how your brain works. And it's interesting because in other communities, I think about people who like don't have legs. They don't walk around saying, well, I should be able to walk. It's just I don't have these damn legs. And it's like, well, I'm sure you have. I'm sure that group of people has their own trauma and self-work that they need to do to go, to work with their identity as a person with disabilities. But it feels weird to say that. And I don't know if that's part of their daily dialogue. If that's, what is circling out there? Ooh, there's a couple of hawks. Something's about to get eaten. I don't know that attitude would go a long way. And I feel like the community would work really hard if one of the, if you and your paraplegic buddies or whatever were, out in a game or something and someone said that, maybe they would hold you accountable and go like, hey man, that's not a helpful thought. But I don't know that we've kind of reached that point, particularly with any form of neurodivergence. I still feel like a lot of people have that sort of embodiment of working to overcome the disability so that it doesn't show through, and trying to appear and behave. That's a pretty color. As if they're neurotypical. And so we do experience a lot of microaggressions, and we do sort of take that feedback. I had one of the reasons that my diagnosis of autism was so cathartic for me, I just thought that like sense of relief more than anything was, I try to be a realist, and I'm like, okay, if I have a problem with every single person and I have a trouble maintaining relationships in my life, then clearly the problem's me. The problem is not every single person around me, right? That's what crazy people think. All my girlfriends are crazy. And I'm like, you had 10 girlfriends. I think you're the common denominator, right? Like, I'm the common denominator in my own life. That's what a motivational speaker told me, which is true. Like, when I went to college, there was a motivational speaker, and he was like, you are the only person on the stage of your life that is on stage the entire time. I'm like, oh, that's cool. That's interesting. But, not helpful in that, one tiny case. It's been motivational like the rest of my life, but in maintaining a sense of agency and making sure that, I take accountability for my own actions and take agency. That's the key word, is being an agent in your life, not admitting that you're powerless. But it did sort of cement a belief that I already had, which is that I'm the problem. And so that when that diagnosis came, there was that kind of light bulb moment where I was like, aha, it's not me, like genuinely. I'm not the problem. That was, like, I don't know if the right word is surprising, but it didn't feel surprising at all, actually. It felt like obvious, like, oh, I should have known. Like, oh, there were signs going back. So I've spent my entire life, this isn't layering well, this is a topper, but it's a little bit thin. Like, I've spent my entire life trying to pretend as if that disability didn't exist. I spent my entire life trying to be quote unquote normal. And as several of you are probably guessing, that's really, really unhealthy. It's just not good to not feel like you're good enough. And I feel like that explains like a lot of the depression and mental health issues I experienced growing up. It was like, geez Louise, I was never good enough for myself or anyone else. I'm going to do an extra good job blending today because yesterday my blending job was shit. One of the microaggressions that, I love this woman very much. She's very, full of God's spirit, right? She just wants to do good on this earth and, earn your place in heaven even though you don't have to. Like that's her attitude and how she would see herself in the world. But when I told her I was autistic, she was kind of like, well, this is exactly what she said was, oh, I wish I could just get inside your head for a moment. And I was just like taken aback. So like the only thing I could think of to say that like wasn't like aggressive was like, oh, that's kind of how I felt about other people, their life. I just want to know what's going on inside your head and kind of shook it off. And I'm like, I don't know. Am I a sideshow Bob? Am I being like really sensitive, or was that like, let me know what you think. Was that kind of insensitive of her to say? I mean, I did not call her out, and I was not going to call her out in my relationship with that company. Like I was still, kind of like, oh, we think you'd be a great fit type of situation. So there's no way I was going to call her out for my own sake. But I'm like, shit. I don't know. I kind of come across as to some people a lot of times, and so I don't want to always correct people. That's another like ableistic belief, is that we are obligated to educate others about their beliefs, and it's like, or about like our needs and our customs, and it's like, no, we're not. Like, it is just as much incumbent upon us to advocate for what we need as it is for you to find out what we need, especially when there's so much injustice going around right now. Like, very interesting. I just found out that, I don't know if I'm saying this right, but Gallaudet University did not actually have a deaf president until 88, I think it was. Right? So you have these policies and privileges, or policies being implemented out of privileged perceptions of like, here's what we think that the deaf community needs. And I'm like, ooh, that's a little patronizing. I mean, if only deaf people had a language that they could use to communicate. Oh wait, but they can. Right? Like that's kind of the attitude. This is a decision made. Wow, I just swiped my eye. I'm okay. A decision made out of a position of privilege, and those types of decisions very rarely reflect the true needs of the community. There's a really famous example of the tire swing and what it looks like to everybody involved. Like, I don't know if it exists outside of military circles, but it's like, here's what the airmen requested, here's what leadership thought they needed, here's what the contractors needed, here's what the government paid for. And it goes through all these different perspectives of the tire swing. And at the end of the day, the airmen don't get the actual tire swing that they wanted. Because of all the interpretations, when all you needed to do was go listen to the airmen. I think I'm missing the gold in this look. I'm starting to cover it up, and I'm okay with that. I kind of wanted like a very fall vibe today. I'm even going to go over this with some more taupe. I think the cool tones just match better. That's really pretty. Oh, this was the palette I used, by the way. Very pretty tones in this one. I don't remember where I was at, but like, that's the gist of it. Like, don't treat other people's disability like a sideshow, like it's there for your curiosity, even if it's originating from a wonderful place. And then ignore the voices of the people who are competent and can best describe the accommodations that they need based on the experiences that they live. I feel like that goes without saying. But it's hard to be an advocate for others who are struggling when you don't even have that ability to be yourself in a positive light. You know, there was a woman that I coached who was very much struggling. This looks gonna be glowy. Very much struggling with her ADHD. It's really impacted her emotionally, physically. It's led to long periods of unemployment. Like, she's struggling. And if, you know, I was kind of like, well, I don't struggle with it, why don't you? That would have been incredibly detrimental to not only, you know, her goals and her eventual employment opportunities, just been incredibly hurtful and rude. It's like, I don't struggle with it because I've spent my entire life accommodating it, because I found things that work for me, and I just have this great understanding of who I am. And I also have a comorbid condition. I have autism, and that gave me a lot of somewhat that rigidity and that penchant for, you know, being well organized and having things just so, really complemented my ADHD so that I didn't struggle as much with certain aspects of it, particularly school. I was able to do very, very well in school. So I haven't had some of the same struggles with ADHD. Now, do I still have it? Yes. Does it still absolutely impact me? Of course. But it's not for me to judge other people who struggle with it. Like, I think about like my teenage son who has both autism and ADHD, and they don't really complement each other the way they complemented me. Like, he has a need for schedule changes, but or schedule rigidity, but an inability to actually adhere to a schedule because of his ADHD. Like, they do not complement each other. So, like, I think it's just important to, I guess what am I saying is, ask the person whose experience it is what it is that they're experiencing, and to approach things with genuine curiosity, because that's kind of the way that you're going to make a difference. That's kind of the way that, purple or black? I feel black today. I think that's the way you're going to make a difference. And I didn't realize it, but curiosity is one of my core values growing up. It wasn't until I read Dare to Lead, which is now many, many years ago, that I read that particular book by Brene Brown. I was like, oh, I'm smart and I value learning, but it's not actually academics that I value. It's curiosity. Like, I broke it down and said, okay, why is this important to me? And what is it about learning that's important to me? And it's not having the information in your head. It's generally being open to other people's experiences and just being able to share someone else's joy without crushing it because it's not for you, and to sit with someone in their weakness without downplaying it because it isn't yours. And it's just sharing in humanity. And as someone who's autistic and has always been, always been on the outside of that, to be able to go, oh, this is why this is so important to me, and simultaneously This is why sometimes I felt a little alone or a little left out, is because I don't really get to share in my values. Has made an incredible amount of difference in sort of how I relate to myself and how I relate to others. So I feel very, very blessed to have that diagnosis, which has done a lot for my mental health. It's done a lot for me not trying to be someone else and just trying to be who I am. And who I am, apparently, is pretty wonderful. Even though I don't feel that way about myself most days. It's given me the freedom to explore the idea that what the people say about me who are close to me, what they say about me is actually true. Like, maybe my parents aren't saying it just because they're my parents and they love me. Maybe my spouse thinks I'm a great person and he didn't choose me, right? Like, he chose to marry me. Nobody held a gun pointed to his head. Like, maybe he does see really good characteristics in me and I am a person equal to that of another person. And I am, like, deserving and of receiving love and capable of giving it. And sometimes I do question, I'm like, do I love people the same way that they love me? And I don't know. It's not an experience that I can answer. I'm going to reapply a little bit of highlighter. But I can tell you that I love people in my own way. And I'm extremely empathetic and I'm extremely curious and I'm a whole person despite my disability. And I don't know what it's like to not have it. I don't know in the least what it's like to be neurotypical. But turns out I don't actually need to know. That's not what I need to be a whole person despite having a disability. A disability does not make you less whole. And I'm not totally opposed to the medical model of viewing disability. I'm not saying you don't struggle with it. I'm not saying that there isn't a standard for, like, physiological typicality that we can compare ourselves to. I'm not saying that. But I do think that our focus in conversation, our focus in approach, in coaching people should always be strengths-based. Like, what can you do and what do you do well? Because that exists. That exists for everyone. And I don't care how, what am I looking for? Maybe nothing. Maybe I call it. That's pretty as it is. Maybe we're fine as is. There's a very high support needs autistic kid I met a couple of years ago at an autistic gym where I took my kids, and he was nonverbal. And I don't know, what he's going to grow up to do. But it's probably not going to be work related. I don't foresee him contributing to the economy in a stereotypical fashion. But that doesn't mean that someone's a drain on society. Just because you can't produce something doesn't mean you don't have a value. And it's up to us to explore that value. It's to say, hey, instead of saying, I don't see it, you must not have one. To say, I don't see it, I need to look harder. And that's one reason why I'm, like, such a big advocate. Well, I don't know if I'm a big advocate. I want to be a big advocate. That's a more humble opinion. So I'm trying to be an advocate for that community because most of us can. Common misconception, but most of us can actually advocate for ourselves. Regardless of what a certain public figure says about autistic individuals, most of us do contribute to the economy. That just really shapes my life right now. And it makes me feel good. It gives me hope. So I hope that this was helpful to you. I hope this was inspiring to you. Thank you for joining me.